Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm a musician, producer, and Ableton certified trainer. You can find my work at brianfunk.com. And today's show is about staying creative during chaos. And like so many of my shows, it's just as much for me as it is for anybody listening. This is something I'm struggling with quite a lot these days. I'd say the last month or so has been very difficult for me to get motivated and get to work and actually do things. I like to keep a pretty strict schedule of producing music, Ableton Live packs, tutorials, podcast episodes. And lately I've found almost like I can't do any of it, as if I've totally dried up and run out of ideas and run out of things to say, and probably more so wondering what the point of it all is. Why make music right now? We're living in a very crazy time, so if you're listening in the future, which I hope is better than the current situation, this is June 30th, 2020. And our world has been through quite a lot this year. And it has made me feel like a lot of the stuff I love to do is a little pointless. And I've really struggled to get work done. And you might have seen that if you're paying close attention, that some of my output has slowed a little bit. I'm really struggling to get back on the track. And today I want to talk about how to do that and why it's important that we do that, and kind of also coach myself out of it and just think about why we do art and music at all in the first place. And I hope if you're feeling any of these feelings I'm feeling, which I imagine there must be some people that are, then maybe this will help you to get going, and hopefully it'll help me to get going too. I want to thank my wife, Courtney, for helping me through this a bit, talking me through this, trying to understand like what's important. And those conversations we've had have been really, really helpful. And even having this as a problem to worry about is kind of like a feedback loop, because in light of suffering and pain and hardship that's going on, this seems silly, and it makes me feel guilty for having it, and that's made it even harder. So thank you, Bog, for helping me through this. So music is really important. It provides us with hope. We tell stories through it. We teach lessons. It brings people together. It challenges our minds. Making music is hard, and it's something to do for our brains, and it's a great activity. It helps us commiserate with each other with our shared pain, and helps us celebrate joy. I mean, imagine a party without music. It's, that it does a lot to lift people up, and it's a universal language that we all understand. I was thinking back to my days in college in a Shakespeare class, actually, and the professor had asked us to recite lyrics from a song we love. And we went around the room, everyone gave a song. I remember I gave You Are Like a Hurricane, There's Calm in Your Eye, which is from Neil Young. And we went around the room like probably a number of times doing that. It was easy for everybody. We did poetry. That was a little bit harder. And then we did stories, and that was even harder. Fewer and fewer lines were quoted from people. And the point of this was, I believe, to show us that music has a lot of other things attached to it that helps us remember it. It's got the rhythm, it's got the rhyme, and there's a melody to it. And we remember the things we hear in music and what the singers say. It sticks with us. And I think the point was to show us in Shakespearean plays that when the characters have important speeches that we're supposed to pay attention to, they often go into rhyme and certain patterns of rhythm, because the author wanted us to remember that. And music has been something we've used for our entire existence as human beings, to tell stories, to teach lessons, to help each other through difficult times and celebrate one another. It's extremely important for that. It also is a big part of our personalities and beliefs. A lot of the music that I heard growing up really helped shape me and become the person I am, and helped me understand things about life by learning about whatever the artists were going through and how they dealt with it. And some of the lessons from the music really helped make me into who I am and helped me understand a lot about myself. And I don't know where I would be without that. And a lot of people I know are like that too, where the artists they follow really helped shape them. So this is important because a lot of values and beliefs come out of the music we listen to. In my struggle to find purpose and meaning for making music and art, it's kind of made me think about something about the way things are right now. And I'm not going to share any personal opinions, really. This isn't the forum for it. And if you're coming to me for any kind of political clarity, you should probably have your right to vote revoked, because I'm not qualified for that. But in terms of art and music, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I will say this, that my philosophy is that what's good for anyone is good for all of us. We want each other to be well. We want each other to be happy. We want everyone to be prosperous. It's better for everybody else. It's in our own interests. And I think when the coronavirus hit, if there could have been a silver lining on it, was that we are all connected and we're all in this together. The health of a person on one side of the world really does matter to the other people on the other side of the world. We're part of a bigger thing. We're all on the same planet. We're all the same species, and we're all in this together. And our interests are really intertwined. And what's good for you is good for me and good for everyone else. So I did hold a little hope for that, and I still do. And I think music can be a big part of that. But one of the problems I think that happened is we lost our face-to-face interactions. As we all went into lockdown, we didn't get to see each other as much. And our small, simple interactions with other people that we wouldn't normally run into, or even people that we don't agree with on everything, are really important. But when we're in lockdown and all we have is our social media, which are shallow forms of communication, we lose a lot of the intricacies of being human. We don't get to go to work, for example, and see our coworkers. And maybe there's a coworker you don't totally agree with, but you can interact with them and get along with and joke around with them or talk about things. It doesn't have to go deep, and it doesn't have to be anything major, but it kind of just shows you that they're just another person just like you are. We've lost that ability to see other people with different beliefs go about their lives as regular people, just like we are. So we're kind of dwelling in our social media echo chambers. And as we all know, these social media platforms are by design going to give us more of what we want. They analyze the things we click on and comment on and interact with, and it gives us more of that stuff. And I'm not trying to blame it, but I think it narrows our perspective quite a lot. And even worse, I think it characterizes our interests. You know, the media kind of takes our opinions and beliefs, and everything gets divided into sides, and people start to believe that if somebody doesn't agree with you completely, they must be the absolute worst of the other side. And I think in reality, most people, not all, but most people have nuanced beliefs. And conversation is the important thing that we need to understand those. But without that, it kind of causes people to double down in whatever direction they lean in. And we're losing that ability to converse face to face and instead doing it in little tweets and posts and things like that. I mean, I could, at work, run into someone who I don't agree, maybe say like a teacher whose process I don't agree with, but talk with them and understand where they're coming from and realize they're a regular person just like me. And even though we don't see eye to eye, we each have our own thing to offer. And I think that's important too. You know, I have my own philosophies in teaching, but other teachers have different ones. And that's a good thing, I think, for people to be exposed to different styles. And I miss that. I really do. I miss that part of seeing other people, to just understand where they're coming from. Over the last few days, I've found yet another layer to enjoy about one of my favorite albums, really, called What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. I think of it as like a concept album. I put it right up there with the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, or the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. It's one of my favorite records, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. And it deals with a lot of difficult situations. This came out in 1971. It's during the Vietnam War. It's after a lot of the hopefulness of the 60s, kind of the come down, and yet the overall spirit and message, I think, is just so positive. And one of the most important things I think that is emphasized is conversation. The first song is called What's Going On, and the second song is called What's Happening, Brother. And both of those songs have these like double meanings of like, you know, hey, what's happening here? But also like, hey, what's going on? How are you? What's happening? And there are lines in here that's like, you know, what's going on with you? Especially in the song What's Happening, Brother, the second song. He's talking about like the newspaper, and he's behind the times a little bit, he says. But he says, what else is new, my friend, besides what I read? And they go on just to say, how have you been? The third verse is, are we still getting down where we used to go to dance? Will our ball club win the pennant? Do you think they even have a chance? And then it goes into like one of the most beautiful melodies and chord changes. And he says, tell me, friend, how in the world have you been? He's asking, how are you as an individual? And I think sometimes we forget that the state of the world is built up of all of us individuals together. And this song is getting to that. And this is the kind of thing we've lost out on when we're locked down and quarantined and we only have social media to communicate. And, you know, like, when he says, are they still getting down where we used to go to dance? We can't go get down and go out and dance right now. And will our ball club win the pennant? Do you think they have a chance? There's no sports right now. And sports is a thing that people can bond over on a simple way. You know, you might not get along with someone, say, politically or whatever, certain beliefs, but you might be able to talk about baseball with them, or football or basketball or whatever sport you want. And you can enjoy someone's company that way. And this message lives on in the music. This is a big lesson to take away from this, to take care of each other, to find out how we're all doing, to look out for one another, to come together, and to speak to each other and find out how we are. That's so important. We get that from music. I kind of say that people are made up of a combination of nature and nurture. Nature being like who you are, like naturally, your DNA, who your parents were, where you were born, all of that stuff. And the nurture is how you're treated, your life experiences. And a lot of that, if you really think about it, is not up to choice. We're kind of, we just get that. It's just the cards we're dealt. That's really not in our control. And I don't think there's a lot of reason to believe that any one of us would act any differently if we were in other people's positions. And music helps us understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, in someone else's life, and see things from their perspective a bit. If you think about evolution, it moves incredibly slow. Modern humans haven't been around very long, and we are genetically identical to the humans that lived thousands and thousands of years ago. And if you go back to the beginning of recorded history, we are the same as them. There's no difference. We haven't evolved more than them. The real difference is that their technologies were primitive and they didn't have the lessons of history that we have. We have those lessons and we have greater technologies now. And a lot of those lessons are learned and kept through music and storytelling. And if we don't pay attention to that, we're in danger of doing some of the same horrendous things that people in the past did. So it's really important to keep that in mind. I don't think there's any reason to believe that if we are so similar on so many levels, that we would act any differently than people of those times long ago. If we were put in the same situations, had the same backgrounds, why would we act any different? I think it's kind of arrogant to think that in another person's exact same circumstance that I would do anything different than what they would do. So it's important that I understand them and learn from them. Music is such a great way to do that. That's why our efforts to make art and to create aren't unimportant. They're not trivial. And even though they might not be major contributions, they add up. They're part of the little things that make the whole story. It can be enough to make one person feel a little better or see things a little differently. And that's important because that spreads energy. It's like a virus. It's contagious. We pick up on that. And when someone else is down, you feel that. When someone else feels good, you feel that. And we need to understand how we all feel and come together, and it helps us see what other people are going through. And we need it more than ever. I think we're missing it a lot. I think music is part of our story. We learn from it. We can experience emotions that we've never gone through ourselves. We can feel them in ways that words can't express. We can understand what it's like to be a person. This is why storytelling is so important. This got me thinking about a quote I heard once before, and maybe this isn't the one I heard, because I was kind of surprised to see that the internet says it comes from George R.R. Martin, who wrote the Fire and Ice Game of Thrones series. But it doesn't matter who said it. The point is somebody said it, and the idea is what we're really after. And this particular quote that I found was, "A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one." And that's something we can offer through music and art. And it's so important that we live these different lives and we understand what it's like to be other people and be in their shoes. Music, as I said before, might be even more powerful than reading because of how easy it is to remember it, but just the fact that the melodies and the harmonies communicate emotions that words don't really have the ability to hit sometimes. And I think anyone listening to this podcast knows that sometimes it's just the way the lyric and the music come together, and it can be really striking. It can be enough to change your life. And we want change. We want the world to be a better, happier place right now than it is. And I'll bring this back again maybe to something else from What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, that track What's Going On, where he says, "Only love can conquer hate." A great concept. Fighting more is not going to make it better. We need to come together and understand each other and talk and love each other, because only love can conquer hate. So if you are feeling a little bit of despair, depression, or whatever it is, the type of thing I'm going through myself, I think these are good things to keep in mind. Sorting these thoughts out have helped me a little bit to understand the importance of what we do and making music and sharing our stories and listening to other people's stories. So I hope that helps. Hope it brings you up a little bit. Be good to each other. Love each other. Make great music. And I'll see you again next time on the Music Production Podcast.